Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. Happy holidays to all those ghosties and ghoulies out there. If you're new here, hello, my name is Learn the Conjurer and I am your host of all things spooky, creepy, weird, and fun. And today we're gonna have fun! Because, we always have fun. Right? I'm coming to you today from my very cozy little happy haunt of holiday cheer. So you can't not have a jack-o'-lantern in your Christmas tree, right? I think it's safe to say that everyone is very happy to say goodbye to this year. But before we officially send it off, we have to go through all of our awesome holidays, which will actually still be going on even in January. If you celebrate another holiday other than Christmas or Christmasween, feel free to go and leave it in the comments down below. I love to hear about what people celebrate during these times. So yes, I'm aware. I made choices with my makeup today. Merry Christmas! Well, ghosties and ghoulies, what are we talking about in this video today? Well, I'll tell ya! You see, there's a lot of traditions around the holiday time, and as a matter of fact, there was always one holiday tradition that my family never quite observed while I was growing up, that it seemed that most other Christian families followed. That was the tradition of building gingerbread houses. My mom always would tell me, oh, it's gonna make a mess, and you're not really gonna like it because the cookies taste like poo. But it kind of seemed really fun and a lot of people were doing it and I kind of wanted to be involved in, something like that. So obviously, as the grown-up ghostie that I am, I decided that I would build my first gingerbread house. Yay! And of course, I wouldn't have been able to do it without a very dear friend of mine named Weston. Thanks, my dude. Weston actually gifted me this really awesome spooky gingerbread house that was out during Halloween, but naturally he gave it to me for now because already is Halloween. So this is what I created. Oh my gosh, I love it so much. Oh, okay, we're raining candy. Yeah, I really am excited about it. I will admit I didn't actually put it together. It kind of came pre-assembled, but who's counting, right? Who's the gingerbread police? Who do I have to report to? I was thinking, I don't really know the history of gingerbread houses, and the last time I remember something kind of creepy that had to do with gingerbread houses was obviously the Grimm Fairy Tale of Hansel and Gretel, or Hansel and Gretel for my German viewers, if I have any. If you're from Germany, can you comment down below? Because I don't know. I don't think I'm that cool to reach out there yet. I thought it would be fun to build it and then tell you a little bit about the history that I found. Because who doesn't want a creepy story told to them during this beautiful Yuletide season? Look at the little jack-o'-lanterns! If you want to see more spooky gingerbreadness, feel free to follow me on Instagram at Learn the Conjurer. You're probably wondering, Learn, are you gonna eat this? Guys, I really love food, but look at it. It's so precious. It's so cute. I couldn't do anything to hurt this. I'm not gonna lie, it does look really good, especially these little bone candies right here. I don't know if you can see that. Look at that. Look at how delicious that looks. Okay, this is torture just keeping this up to my face, so I'm gonna put it down now. Obviously, I dressed for the occasion today, wearing a bat and a Santa hat, but also my Slimer Ghostbuster sweater! Yeah! That was disturbing. I'm sorry. You didn't come here to see that. Before we get to the building, as well as the history talk, I want to thank every one of you for supporting me throughout these couple of months of me being on the YouTubes. And of course, I wish you all a glorious, wonderful, blessed be holiday season. Whatever you celebrate, I hope it's wonderful because you deserve it. Yes, you. With that, please enjoy my deliciously creepy creation and happy holidays to all.
All right, everyone, let's talk all about gingerbread houses. And as you can see, I'm about to create my own. Hooray! Okay, so gingerbread houses, they originated in Germany during the 16th century. So when we think about gingerbread and houses, that's where it all came together. Now, as far as my research goes, I can't seem to find the person who was smart enough to actually put these things together. But then, I gotta wonder, did they eat them? I don't think that they did, because during that time, these elaborate cookie-walled houses were decorated with foil and, in addition, gold leaf. So I don't really think that's probably something you want to eat. I'm pretty sure a kid or two probably said, F it, I'm gonna eat this. These gingerbread houses, they became associated with the Christmas tradition, but it is unclear as to whether or not gingerbread houses were a result of a popular fairy tale or Christmas. Hard to say. Now, according to certain researchers, the first gingerbread house was the result of a well-known Grimm's fairy tale called Hansel and Gretel, in which two children, abandoned in the forest, find an edible house made of gingerbread and sugar decorations. I'm sure when you were a child, you were probably told this story. There was probably some hallmarky version that everyone heard. But there's a super un-Christmassy origin of gingerbread houses that I want to get into that reminds us very much of the traditions that date back to the story of Hansel and Gretel. When we're talking about gingerbread houses, they are a big business. Wilton, they're a popular confectionery making company. They report that they create over 2 million gingerbread house kits just in 1 year. Who knows how that's increased over the last few years, especially with 2020 and everyone wanting to be at home to create things with their families. Now, to be clear, gingerbread houses didn't start with the Brothers Grimm, because of course they did date back to the 1600s, a few centuries after the emergence of gingerbread itself. The tale of Hansel and Gretel is actually much older. By the time that folklorist Jacob and Wilhelm Grimm composed and published a version of the tale in the early 19th century, gingerbread houses were a long-standing tradition. Now, somewhere along the way, possibly because of historical connections between gingerbread and religious ceremonies or guilds, gingerbread and, of course, gingerbread houses had become associated with Christmas. And the Grimm's wildly read stories helped to popularize these gingerbread houses, so these things go hand in hand. It's interesting because given the links between the gruesome fairy tale, which does involve two children almost being cooked and eaten by a witch who lives in a gingerbread house, it might seem surprising that the gingerbread house is still connected to Christmas. But today's family-friendly holiday has numerous roots in the Grimmers' festivities of earlier times. But why don't we talk about discovering the truly grim history behind the fairy tale of Hansel and Gretel? When a great famine struck Europe in 1314, mothers abandoned their children and, in some cases, even ate them. Scholars believe that these tragedies gave birth to the story of Hansel and Gretel. An interesting fact is that the notorious tale of Hansel and Gretel had been translated into 160 languages since the Brothers Grimm first published the German lore in 1812. Dark as it is, the story features child abandonment, attempted cannibalism, enslavement, and murder! All the good things to do with Christmas, right? No, I'm just kidding. We're just talking about the fairy tale now. But unfortunately, the origins of the story are equally, if not more, horrifying. How? Well, let me tell you. Again, most people are familiar with the story, but for those who aren't, just another little reminder, it opens on a pair of children who are abandoned by their starving parents in the forest. The kids Hansel and Gretel get wind of their parents' plan to find their way home by following a trail of stones. Now, interestingly enough, I remember being told this as a child, and I was told that it was breadcrumbs. Were you told that it was breadcrumbs? Go ahead and leave a comment down below if that's the case. But apparently Hansel was the one who dropped these stones earlier while they were being abandoned, right? So the mother, or the stepmother by some tellings, then convinces the father to abandon the children a second time. What? That is crazy. Also, dang, really effed up, right? Now this time, Hansel drops breadcrumbs to follow home. So apparently in some versions, Hansel drops stoned first and then he drops breadcrumbs. So I think it just depends on which version you read. But birds ate the breadcrumbs and the children become lost in the forest. So that's the version that I remember. So the starving pair come upon a gingerbread house, and then they began to eat ravenously because, of course, they're starving too. Now, unbeknownst to them, the home is actually a trap set by an old witch, or an ogre, depending upon what version you're reading, who enslaves Gretel and forces her to overfeed Hansel so that they can be eaten by the witch herself. Ugh. The pair manages to escape when Gretel shoves the witch into an oven, and then they return home with the witch's treasure and find that the evil matriarch is no longer there and is presumed dead. So then they live happily ever after, right? But the true story behind the tale of Hansel and Gretel is not so happy as the ending. Way to get dark during the Christmastide! Modern readers know Hansel and Gretel from the works, of course, by the aforementioned German brothers Jacob and Wilhelm Grimm. The brothers were inseparable scholars, medievalists, and they had a passion for collecting German folklore. Between 1812 and 1857, the brothers published over 200 stories in 7 different editions of what has since become known in English as Grimm's Fairy Tales. Jacob and Wilhelm never intended for their stories to be for children per se, but rather, the brothers sought to preserve Germanic folklore in a region whose culture was being currently overran by France during the Neapolitanic Wars. If I'm saying that right. Whatever. I'm not really good at words sometimes, guys. Gotta be honest. In fact, the early editions of the Grimm brothers' work that was later translated into children and household tales lacked illustrations, so scholarly footnotes abandoned. The stories were dark and they were filled with murder and mayhem. Yay, kids, gather around! The stories nonetheless quickly caught on, and of course Grimm's fairy tales had such a universal appeal that eventually, in the United States alone, there had been over 120 different editions made. Wow. Now, these stories featured all-star lineups of well-known characters including Cinderella, Rapunzel, Rumpelstiltskin, Snow White, Little Red Riding Hood, and of course, Hansel and Gretel. So the true story of Hansel and Gretel can go back to a cohort of tales that were originated in the Baltic region during the Great Famine of 1314 to 1322. Getting hungry yet? Volcanic activity in Southeast Asia and New Zealand ushered in a period of prolonged climate change that led to crop failures and massive starvation across the globe. That's not unsettling at all. In Europe, the situation was particularly dire since the food supply was already scarce. When the Great Famine struck, the results were devastating. One scholar estimated that the Great Famine impacted 400,000 square miles of Europe, 30 million people, and may have killed off up to 25% of the population in certain areas. Isn't this a lovely thing to listen about while you're watching me create this really cute thing? That's so great. We are passing around that holiday cheer. Oh my goodness. In the process, elderly people chose to voluntarily starve to death to allow the young to live. Oh my God, how tragic! Others committed infanticide or abandoned their children. So there is also evidence of cannibalism as well. William Rosen, in his book, The Third Horseman, cites an Estonian chronicle which states that in 1315, quote, mothers were fed their children. Whew, that's nice. This is so nice. Everybody feeling warm and toasty? Great. An Irish chronicler, that's a fun word, chronicler, also wrote that the famine was so bad that people, quote, were so destroyed by hunger that they were extracting bodies of the dead from the cemeteries and dug out the flesh from the skulls and ate it. And women ate their children out of hunger. I'm really happy that I chose to not eat this in the end because this is... I hope none of you are having a snack right now because I am very sorry. Please don't unsubscribe to me. And it was from this grim chaos that the story of Hansel and Gretel was born. The cautionary tales that preceded Hansel and Gretel all dealt directly with the themes of abandonment and survival. Almost all of these stories also had the forest as a tableau of danger, magic, and death. Death. Stop making death money. One such example came from the Italian fairy tale collector Giambattista Basile, who, that's a fun word, I hope I said that right, who published a number of stories titled The Nunillo and Nellella. A cruel stepmother forced her husband to abandon his 2 children in the woods. The father tries to foil the plot by leaving the children a trail of oats to follow, but these are eaten by a donkey. Okay, so same type of deal we're finding. And of course, the grimmest of these early tales, though it is a Romanian story, the little boy and the wicked stepmother. In this fairy tale, 2 children are abandoned and find their way home by following a trail of ashes. That sounds really hard. You have to have a lot of ashes, I think, because like wouldn't the wind like take all of it away, or like wouldn't it blend it with it? Okay, anyway. But when they return home, the stepmother kills the little boy and forces the sister to prepare his corpse for a family meal. Okay, anybody want to go ahead and share any of this during the Christmas dinner? Because I would love to know how it goes. Leave it in the comments. The horrified girl obeys the stepmother and hides the boy's heart inside of a tree. The father unknowingly eats his son, while the sister refuses to take part. After the meal, the girl takes the brother's breast and puts them inside of the heart. The next day, a cuckoo bird emerges, singing, "Cuckoo, my sister has cooked me and my father has eaten me, but now I'm a cuckoo and safe from my stepmother." I feel like it's not a more open thing, but you all understand. I don't think I'm going to put on my resume impersonator. Anyway, the terrified stepmother throws a lump of salt at the bird, but it falls back onto her head and kills her instantaneously. The direct source of the story of Hansel and Gretel, as we know, comes from Henriette Dorothea Wilde, a neighbor of the brothers Grimm, who narrated many of the tales of their first edition, but she ended up marrying Wilhelm. The original versions of Grimm's brothers Hansel and Gretel does change over time, of course. Perhaps the brothers were aware that their stories were being read by children, and so the last edition that they published, they had to sanitize their story a little bit. So you see, by the time that 1857 came around, the edition changed it so that it wasn't any longer a horrible biological mother who decided to abandon her children. No, instead, they transformed this archetypal type into a wicked stepmother. And the father's role, too, was softened by 1857, and he shows more regret for his actions in that particular version. Meanwhile, the tale of Hansel and Gretel has continued to evolve. There are versions today that are meant for preschoolers. So there's a version of this tale that's done by children's author Mercer Mayer. So her story doesn't even touch any of the child abandonment themes. It seems that the true story of Hansel and Gretel may still be darker than even the latest version. Oh, I tell you, I can definitely agree with that. Well, everyone, what do you think? I mean, I can tell you for sure that I always found this story to be super scary, even as a kid. And it definitely made me think before I would eat candy from any place that I didn't know, which was probably the best cautionary tale my parents could have ever taught me. Tell me what you think in the comments, and also let me know what you think of my adorable little gingerbread house. I love it so much. If you like this video, feel free to go ahead and leave a comment and also like it, of course. But if you enjoy spooky content, please consider subscribing because I will be uploading new stuff every single week. With that, thank you so much for joining me. Happy holidays to all. Hope I didn't ruin any of your appetites with this.